So I'm sure people in New South Wales know a lot about Margie, but just quickly, as well as being the Director of Library Services at University of Wollongong, she's also currently the Chair of CAVAL, which is another interesting aspect to think about in terms of leadership and what's going on across the sector. And I know she's been playing a key role in forming the International Alliance of Research Library Association. I know Margie as well has a background and a really keen interest in performance of organisations and measuring performance, and has an MBA, so brings that sort of business leadership mind and thinking to the situation as well. So I look forward to hearing about that. And now handing over to Margie, who will also do our acknowledgement of country as the host university. Thanks, Margie.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you to CAVAL as well. Just a disclaimer here, I have stepped down from the role of Chair of CAVAL. Jill Ben is holding that role, and but I did enjoy my time with CAVAL, and I learned a great deal from that experience. Thank you to CAVAL for enabling this event to come together. I must say it felt like getting ready for a date today, because I knew I was going to be seeing so many people today, some who are known to me and some who were very new. So for those people I haven't had a chance to meet, a big hello from the University of Wollongong, and a deep appreciation to what you're contributing to the CAVAL Mentoring Network. To open today's session, I would like to offer an acknowledgement of country. And today we come to you from Yuin country, and we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which this university and where our libraries are situated. We acknowledge their continued spiritual and cultural connection to country. And as we share our knowledge today, we also pay our respect to the knowledge embedded forever within Aboriginal custodianship of country. So the theme of today's session is about strategic and resilient leadership. And I'll just go and share my screen with you, and let me just, hang on. Now, if someone could give me a thumbs up, just let me know if they can see my PowerPoint presentation. No?
At the moment, we can see your computer screen, Margie.
Okay.
Your desktop screen.
I'll stop that and start again.
That's it. That's good.
Fabulous, thank you. I've failed my first digital dexterity badge for today. All right, so today's theme is about resilient leadership. And I think resilience will be the watchword for 2020 and beyond. For smooth seas does not a sailor make. So through COVID, we are being tested like never before. But let's go back to the beginning of this year. And on the 2nd of January, when I returned to work, I had 2 layers of accountability: my substantive role as Director Library Services, and also the role of acting Pro-Vice Chancellor Students, a role I had not undertook before. And the parting words of the PVC students was, "It's a really quiet time of year, nothing's going to happen." And yet, on the 2nd of January, 3 of our campuses were at the forefront of catastrophic bushfires, threatening the lives and the property of the communities, as well as the students and staff of UOW. Campuses closed, the public and TAFE library partners that we relied upon for the provision of services to our regional campuses also closed or changed their operations dramatically. Business continuity quickly morphed into crisis management, probably the most severe crisis that our university had faced in its history. Importantly for me as a leader, it was a time to walk in other people's shoes and to understand what they needed to know and hear, and to quickly pivot in looking at how do we as leaders execute strategy as well as normal operations in a crisis environment. Things did start to smooth a little as we approached the new year, or the new academic year. Yet about 3 weeks in, then the full impact of COVID came to the fore. This is a pandemic. It is far-reaching and has required fast decision-making and action from all of us. This is a truly disruptive moment. It is a tipping point, and inertia isn't an option despite the many obstacles and challenges that we're facing. I think libraries can hold their heads high in terms of they've been able to demonstrate very ably their agility, speed and creativity in being able to move swiftly into different ways of operating, often with minimal impact on the user experience. Importantly, this has been coupled with empathy, humanity, and having the welfare of all the people who make up our library communities, being staff, stakeholders, community members, and so forth. I think this is the most disrupted experience our generation has faced, and our resilience is being tested. And I have a deep and profound respect for our forebears who have experienced war, depression, recessions, and other significant events. And as awful as COVID is, I believe there will be much that we will learn when we reflect and consider what we've changed for now and what else we still need to do. And this will be a period of significant variation. The tricky thing about resilience, however, is that you really don't know how resilient you are until you've actually gone through an event or experience. So a commitment to developing resilience does require discipline, but the benefit and the yield will be significant by focusing on how we can extend and learn from experiences to build resilience. We will in turn build organisational and personal strength, stamina, flex, capacity for learning. And to build resilience, we need to be open to failure, to setbacks, to risk. And again, this is true for both organisations and individuals as we navigate this particular environment. So late last year, before the calamities, I started reading a book called The 3-Box Solution, A Strategy for Leading Innovation, and I also enrolled in the MOOC as well. The construct and the context really resonated with me through the application of existing principles that we've been using here at UOW Library on the premise of, shaping our thinking about what do we need to stop, start and continue to do through strategy, action and execution. Though in reading these resources and participating in the MOOCs, I discovered that we could do this with greater discipline. So on paper and on this screen, it appears to be a deceptively simple model. The devil is in the detail and in its application, and importantly, the commitment. For this approach to work, a requisite is a clearly defined strategic intent. Now, at UOW Library, that is to be a digital-first library. That is our guiding principle. That is the premise of our mindset in the way that we approach strategy, operations, execution, professional development, competency building, etc. So I'll briefly outline each of the elements, and it will be brief because there's a lot to cover. So let's look at box 1, which focuses on the present. Box 1 plays to the strengths of an organisation. This is where we focus our core platform for success. This is where we have identified through experimentation, through testing, through evaluation, what is of high value to our stakeholders. We know that we have to develop systems, infrastructure, capability to be able to develop and produce these services, resources and experience in a high volume capacity. And we need to provide a consistent high quality experience. So in this environment, when we're managing the present, we typically have a highly controlled, standardized environment. We don't want variation, we want consistency. We want to be able to assure a particular experience for our users. And it's a particularly unambiguous environment because we know our capability, we know what our competencies are, we know who our users are, and we have a pretty good understanding of who the competitors are and how we measure up to our competition and where we can learn in terms of what else we might need to do to continuously improve. Why is this important? This is where we generate return on investment. Now, I understand that libraries don't typically return a profit in terms of a dividend. However, we do produce dividends in terms of value, reputational standing, and also an efficiency dividend in terms of how can we continuously build efficiency in what we do so we can continue to invest in what works well, what is valued by our clientele. And again, this is where we build that necessary infrastructure for success, where we normalise what might have been innovation into core services, resources or products. So box 1 thinking, box 1 strategy is vital to sustained effectiveness of an organisation, but it also has a number of traps. We know how to do box 1 strategy really well. It permeates the core of our essence. It becomes part of our DNA. It's really powerful because we know what our proven formula for success is. It shapes our identity, it shapes our reputation for success. However, being deeply tied to current and past success can come at a price. It can perpetuate complacency. We're good at this. What else do we need to learn? Where else do we need to grow? We're not going to be impacted by changes that are occurring elsewhere. It shapes our identity. It provides meaning for our purpose and what we stand for and who we are. But it can also cannibalise opportunity because it might put blinkers or barriers in front of where new and needed opportunities reside. And it may influence where we invest in terms of capability and competency development. So box 2 thinking is equivalent of committing to what you'll stop doing. It's the trade-off for the new. It's a trade-off for investing in innovation. It's a trade-off for what the future might look like for us as organisation. And this is really hard. There's no denying that. Who wants to be told that their hard-won service, resource, competency, function no longer aligns to the strategic intent? Yet, I put forward that box 2 thinking is essential for sustained growth and relevance in a rapidly changing environment. And if we see that whirlwind of what's happening in our society, our communities, within our institutions, due to COVID and other factors, we need to be able to flex, adapt, and create the new and different at an increasing pace. Box 2 thinking also requires a level of objectiveness as well as humility and vulnerability. The ability to look at what served us well may not be the best option for us in the future. An example of Box 2 thinking here at UOW Library. So a little while ago, we made a deliberate decision to cease or considerably pull back our commitment to face-to-face teaching of information and digital literacies. Rather, we made the conscious decision to look at how we could better embed those that learning, that skill and competency within the curriculum itself, and looking at how we could facilitate the online distributed delivery of the curriculum through the development of digital learning resources, digital learning objects that could more readily be plugged into the curriculum and be delivered in the increasingly online or blended environment. And we all know how quickly, particularly academic libraries, had to switch from face-to-face teaching this year to fully online. We were positioned to help our faculty members pivot into that fully online space. So box 3 is about strategic opportunism. It's about looking into the future. It's looking at where might be the new places for us to extend our service, resource or value proposition. What are the new markets? Who are non-users or new users that we could be targeting? And importantly, it's not about predicting the future, it's about being prepared for circumstances that aren't exclusively in our control. And boy, here at UOW with bushfires, COVID and other events, that has been tested to the power of 10. This slide signals monitoring weak signals, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But I want us to focus on both organisational and personal attributes that are essential for preparing for the future. So this is where we benefit from different thinking, often or even maverick thinking. So who plays a role of being dissatisfied or being restless with the status quo? So we avoid that trap of becoming complacent or too settled in our ways of thinking about where we add value or how we define value and success. How do we open the doors to new ideas and skills? Where else could we be looking? Are we limited by focusing on what's happening within our professional sector, or should we be moving more towards the fringes or beyond and looking at what's happening elsewhere in other industries, sectors, communities, economies, jurisdictions and so forth? Who's got the appetite for a challenge? Because challenge comes with inherent risks and opportunities, because there is the potential for failure, for discomfort, for uncertainty when we explore challenges. What is our appetite for experimentation? How swiftly can we experiment? How quickly can we flex and adapt to new and changing circumstances? And what is uncommon sense? What are the paradoxes that we should be paying attention to? What do we need to look at in terms of paradigm shift to truly challenge conventional thinking? Because BJ, the author of the 3-box solution, points out that organisations that don't look to their futures day in and day out are likely to be surprised in a crisis. And unfortunately, we're seeing that unfold on a day-by-day basis. Ignoring or underinvesting in box 3 thinking will lead to a future of declining performance, again tied to complacency, lack of investment in reframing required competencies, knowledge, skills, technologies, new and emerging good or better practices. Yet often, and particularly in times of stress, box 1 thinking is often privileged over box 2 and box 3. It can sometimes be paralysing to think, what do we need to trim? What do we need to cut back on? What are the trade-offs that we need to make? Yet that will be essential as we move into an ever restricted, fiscally managed environment, whichever institution you're representing today. So looking at the weak signals, what does that mean? Well, in an era of COVID-19, these signals are no longer weak. They've actually been amplified, and I think there's a lot for us to learn from that. So to quickly look at examples of customer discontinuities. So from an academic perspective, one of our major discontinuities is the international student pipeline. That has essentially been severed and probably well into 2021. So what is it that we need to do to respond, to flex, to adjust to those discontinuities? We've seen a huge transformation in the way that technology is being used. Emails, landlines, simple examples have been overturned for Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Slack, a whole range of communication and collaboration platforms that are far more efficient for the day-to-day connections that need to be sustained and nurtured in this very different way of working. I anticipate that we'll see a significant rise in the number of private providers of education. We're already seeing new distribution channels in terms of the fully online delivery of the curriculum. I anticipate that the rise of micro-credentials will also potentially even be non-traditional competitors for the multi-year credentialed courses that the university sector has been offering for many years. We're also seeing an increase in nationalistic approaches. I have a very strong interest in what's happening in Hong Kong, given that we have a campus in Hong Kong with the new national security legislation. What will that mean for the free flow, uncensored flow of information and knowledge? What will this mean for the research endeavour? So we need to be very mindful of these issues. So as I start wrapping up this quick presentation, I'd like you to reflect upon how the 3-box model for innovative thinking could benefit you as an individual, as well as your organisation. For the future begins today. We don't start planning for 2025 in 2024 or 2025. We start right now. We do it day by day because we don't know with precision what the next 5 years is going to look like. And this year has shown that come to light in astounding ways. Who predicted this pandemic? No one, and yet we've had to pivot and turn. So if your future begins today and you need to work on it day by day, what would a personal SWOT analysis reveal about you? What should you be preserving and protecting in terms of what adds real deep value in terms of your competency, your knowledge, your skill set, your values, your norms, behaviours? So you can preserve box 1, the successful present. Also, what would you discard in terms of behaviour, practice, competency, etc., box 2, to make space for box 3, growth and innovation? What are you doing to challenge personal professional assumptions How are you opening yourself to new ideas, skills, thinking, paradigms, so you can develop the new and needed competencies? Or are you in a position where you might be able to contribute to maverick thinking, increasing risk tolerance and so forth? Because I'm pretty confident that none of us want to preference inertia, being passive, and limiting our growth or limiting our ability to be empowered to navigate this new world. So, in closing, our world has changed irrevocably. The identity, purpose, norms of us as organisations, as individuals are being reshaped. And already we have seen that our capacity for resilience, change and innovation is being tested like it has never been before. The toothpaste is out of the tube, however. There's a lot of things that we did in the past that can no longer neatly be pushed back in that nice, neat tube of what was previously known as normal. And I think that's okay, because while there are many wonderful things that were pre-bushfires, pre-COVID, I think this experience has revealed that there are a number of practices, behaviours, norms that benefited from being shaken up, being reassessed, being reframed in a very different operating environment. So I'd like you to think about some of the takeaways from today's brief presentation. Resilience can be acquired, it can be developed. It's built on experiences that are challenging, that are gritty, that are uncomfortable, that are unsettling. There's a lot of learning and growth during those experiences. The 3-box solution is designed to help us think about organisational resilience. What do we need to preserve and defend? Where are the trade-offs? What do we need to let go of? And how do we build our future day by day and really challenge assumptions, norms, behaviours and so forth, so we can see the possibilities where the opportunities reside. So I'd like to thank you for your time today. So I hope you can find ways of avoiding the traps of the past. Be alert to the weak, though I think currently amplified signals that are out there in our environment. Think about how you can create the future day by day. Make time, exercise a discipline to experiment and learn. And have conversations with your colleagues about where might the opportunities lie? Where are new places that we can go to exercise and lever our value, our competency, our professional expertise for now and into the future? Thank you.
Thanks, Margie. That's really, very interesting. What I might do is just let everyone know as well that Margie has agreed to share her slides with us, which is fantastic as well. So people can, we'll send those round after today as well. Now, Sarah, I can't see the chat function, so it would be helpful if, oh, there it is. Right, now I'll get that up. So we've got a few minutes for just a very small number of questions that we might throw to Margie. I'm just checking those opportunities, and just put your hand up if you have got a question. Margie, I guess I'm interested in, and this is some discussion that we've had in some of the mentoring induction sessions, etc. The notions of waves of change, like waves of the pandemic, is these next normals. I think it's interesting in the university space that sort of a lot of the first change was about getting things into a digital, mechanism, online teaching, etc. The second wave of change that universities seem to be grappling with is around the budget changes and the fiscal changes. And in keeping with your, you know, idea about the model and the signalling around that, what do you think that might lead to now in the bigger term? Like, so obviously there's, you know, in various ways, budget cuts and resourcing changes, etc. But I'm thinking the next level of change that might come from a very potentially constricted budget situation for universities globally for quite a while, potentially.
Sure. That's a great question, and it's certainly something that's occupying the thinking of the executive and senior leaders of every academic institution in this country and across the world. So I think some of the, we're going to be very reliant on the domestic market for student enrolments and so forth. So the government subsidised short courses, I think, are going to be a platform to really push the structures for this true notion of lifelong learning. Past experiences showed periods of recession have actually seen an increase in the number of domestic enrolments because people are reskilling, retooling and so on. So I do see that we'll see an acceleration in short courses, micro-credentials and so forth, which means that the notion of what is an academic year, what is an academic experience, is going to change significantly. So I think what we're going to see is kind of like a calendar agnostic approach to the way that the curriculum potentially is designed and delivered. We will see that we've been having conversations about stackable qualifications and so forth. So being able to build those at a time and pace that works best for the student will, I think, will also accelerate. And potentially we'll see a stronger partnering with industry. So there's a lot of talk about translational research at the moment. This is an area that has been, could be stronger for Australia. We could have much stronger partnerships and alliances with industry in terms of translating research and really building the R&D backbone of the nation. So I think those are areas that are going to grow. We'll see an increasing uptake of technology to further streamline activities. So we here at Wollongong, we're seeing major upgrades to enterprise architecture that will build efficiencies that will need to be directed elsewhere. So it may be directed into curriculum development, research activity, very less likely into building administrative services and so forth. That'll be an area I think that's being looked at as a potential trade-off to get the efficiencies to allow sustenance and growth for other areas. So they're just a few high-level directions I think we'll see.
Great. And I can see a couple of comments about the challenge of stopping things, and sometimes stopping things, as you articulated, that potentially have been successful, that people have put a lot of work and time into. I'm seeing that in all sectors at the moment, a real reluctance to let go. Can you talk about anything that, you gave one example at University of Wollongong, anything you personally are finding it hard to let go of, or anything that you're testing or experimenting with at the moment?
Well, I've got a few of my colleagues here in the room, so to speak, who may like to pipe in. But I think what we've seen is even some of our practices have certainly morphed and changed. So, being able to deliver more and more of our services in a blended online way is going to be, the standard approach to the way that we design and deliver our services. We have let go of some activities and and what we've done, others may not agree with, and I know people in my organisation didn't agree with it either. However, although we didn't anticipate COVID-19, we did anticipate, ongoing changes to our strategic direction. And so I made the decision to cease exhibitions. I'm very deeply unpopular. However, it was necessary from an objective point of view and from a strategic perspective, because it could also be, and I also looked at to where else could this function reside across the institution. And it had a better strategic fit outside of the library, which means that we could then redirect scarce resources into areas of growth. So we can start looking at things like digital scholarship. Where do we need to grow our capacity and capability there? Looking at our digital, where we can release resources to extend digital literacy, competency development across the institution. We're also looking very closely at who we partner with, because I think partnerships and alliances are going to be essential for the continued success for us as an organisation within and beyond the library.
Great. And thanks for sharing that. You know, I think that it's a really good example, that exhibition example, because I think everywhere there's these sort of things that people have loved doing and that have been, you know, like another layer. But that idea about really needing to reassess all that and put resources in the growth areas, I think that's a really perfect example about how painful sometimes these decisions can be. So some fantastic thank you messages flowing through on the chat line there. And a couple of other people are contributing some ideas about what's been stopped. So people feel free to keep that chat going. Margie, thank you so much. That was just really very, very interesting, very relevant for us. And I'm sure everyone is really keen to continue to share ideas about, you know, how you do these things, as you've given us some really good examples. So the idea about how to be agile and resilient, and what are the decisions that people are making. So I think we're really, you know, enjoying those examples at the moment. So thank you so much for being with us today and for supporting the cross-institutional library mentoring program again. Thanks, Margie.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you to CAVAL.